Under the canopy of Belanglo State Forest, the night eats sound. Eucalyptus trunks crowd together and blot out the stars. Out on a sandy track, a young woman is running. She trips, scrapes her palms, pushes off the earth, and runs again. Behind her, a man moves with patience, a rifle balanced as if he has done this before. The shot, when it comes, is flat and shocking, bouncing from tree to tree, swallowed by the bush. Minutes later, the forest is quiet again, and what happened is folded into shadow, footprints scuffed over, branches dragged across disturbed soil, the beginning of a secret that will lie in the ground for years. That secret begins to surface in September 1992, when two orienteers step off a trail and notice something pale under leaves. At first, they think it is rubbish. Then, they see bone. Police seal the area and work on their knees, stripping branches, brushing away soil, measuring every inch of ground. The first skeleton is identified as Caroline Clark, 21, a British backpacker who vanished in April. Not far away lies her friend, Joanne Walters. Clark has been shot repeatedly. Walters shows deep stab wounds and cut clothing that hints at cruelty. The girls came for sun and work and freedom. Their journey ends here beneath the gum trees. The search widens the following year, and the forest keeps giving up the same terrible truth. In October 1993, detectives find James Gibson and Deborah Everest, both 19, missing since 1989 after setting out from Melbourne toward a music festival. Gibson has been stabbed. Everest shows blunt force injuries. In November, teams recover the remains of German backpacker Simone Schmidl, 21. Weeks later, in a shallow grave nearby, they uncover the final pair. German couple Anja Habschied and Gabor Neugebauer. Neugebauer has been shot. Habschied was decapitated. Her head is never found. Each grave suggests time taken, victims led off tracks, bodies concealed beneath native cover. Australia names it the Backpacker Murders, and New South Wales police form Task Force Air. Detectives map hostile sign-in sheets and bus timetables, interview road workers and hunters, and drive the Hume Highway charting on-ramps and lay-bys where a car can pull off without notice. The victims span years and passports, connected by hitchhiking and trusting strangers for one more ride. Theories multiply faster than evidence. People whisper about a gang or a cult. The brutality and logistics, pairs controlled, bodies moved, scenes staged, make one killer seem unlikely, yet the evidence points to a single pattern. There is a thread buried in old paperwork. In January 1990, long before the bodies were found, a British backpacker named Paul Onions accepted a ride from a man in a four-wheel drive who called himself Bill. South of Sydney, the driver drew a handgun and produced rope. Onions bailed from the moving vehicle and sprinted down the highway, waving at cars as shots cracked behind him. A woman stopped, and he tumbled into her passenger seat. They reported the attack at a local station. A brief note went into a file and slept there. When Task Force Air begins rereading everything, that note wakes up. Onions returns to Australia and builds a composite. The description, the location, the weapon, the confidence, it all points to a road worker who lives within striking distance of Belanglo and grew up in a large family known for guns and hard talk. In May 1994, police raid the home of Ivan Milat. Inside they find .22 caliber firearms and parts consistent with the shootings, and a cache of camping gear and clothing linked to victims, souvenirs, trophies, the small practical things backpackers carry and never lose, unless someone takes them. The arrest shakes the country, but the trial in 1996 is what burns the case into public memory. Pathologists testify about blades and bullets. Ballistic experts explain why certain projectiles and casings lead back to the firearms in Milat's orbit. Paul Onions takes the stand. his voice steady as he points to the man who tried to abduct him. The defense calls it coincidence stacked on coincidence, but the coincidences have names, serial numbers, and provenance. The jury finds Ivan Milat guilty of 7 murders. The judge hands down life sentences without parole. A country exhales. Closure should follow, but the edges of Belanglo never feel sealed. Detectives who walked the graves privately wonder about help. Another driver, a watcher, a second pair of hands for rope and transport. Witnesses place more than one man in vehicles linked to disappearances. Within the Milat family, rumors of complicity never fully fade. No one else is charged, and the proof never reaches what a court requires, but the doubt remains. At the same time, the list of the missing stretches beyond the 7 names the verdict could prove. Other travelers vanish along the same corridor and are never found. The murders change how people move across Australia. Hitchhiking, once treated as a kind of handshake with the road, suddenly feels reckless. Hostels post warnings. Guidebooks add pages of advice. Avoid remote pickups. Photograph license plates. Text a friend before you climb into a stranger's cab or ute. Parents mail caution with their money. A generation learns the geography of fear. The Hume, Mittagong, the turnoff to Belanglo State Forest, where the gum leaves darken the light at noon. Backpackers still come, but they choose buses, leave itineraries, and message home from payphones and hostel desks. The place itself hardens into a symbol. In 2010, long after the task force closed and the jury's work was done, the name Belanglo is in the news again. Matthew Milat, Ivan's great-nephew, lures a teenager into the same forest on his 17th birthday and kills him with an axe, while an accomplice records audio on a phone. It is not evidence of a curse, just another act of cruelty, but for many Australians, it feels like an echo the land cannot stop repeating. The simple fact that it happens there at all snaps something tight inside people who remember the search lines and the tarps and the numbered flags. Ivan Milat dies in prison in October 2019, still denying everything, still offering no map to the questions that remain. He does not confess to additional victims. He does not explain the cut clothing, the staging, the choices that point to a plan rather than impulse. He leaves families to live with gaps. Some fly home with urns instead of children. Some still refresh registries years later, looking for a match. The forest accepts their visits and gives nothing back. What survives in the record is stark. 7 travelers, Caroline Clark and Joanne Walters, James Gibson and Deborah Everest, Simone Schmeidel, Anya Habschied and Gabor Neugebauer, are taken from the promise of the open road and murdered in the bush. A near victim, Paul Onions, runs for his life and lives to name his attacker. Police follow that thread to a house full of the dead's belongings and to a man a jury finds guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Everything around that core, whether he had help, how many others he tried to hunt, which missing might belong to the same story, remains unsettled. Walk into Belanglo on a bright morning, and you will hear birds and the tick of insects and the wind knocking leaves together. You will also feel the odd, held breath that settles in places where people suffered and no one heard them. It is just a forest, open to the public, used by trail riders and families and local fire crews. It is also a grave without markers. That is the burden of landscape after violence. It becomes 2 places at once. For those who loved the victims, the second place will never fade. For the rest of us, the story is a warning told in the language of tracks and trees and roads where strangers slow. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.